From all of us here at KENS 5, happy holidays.
President impeached by the House of Representatives.
On this vote, the yeas are 228, the nays are 206. Article 1 is adopted.
In the wake of the unprecedented vote against an elected president, Mr. Clinton vows to continue doing the work of the American people.
It's what I've tried to do for 6 years. It's what I intend to do for 2 more until the last hour of the last day of my term.
This is the CBS Evening News. With Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. We're presenting a special 1-hour edition on a momentous day at home and overseas. President Clinton stands impeached by the U.S. House of Representatives. He faces trial early next year and possible removal from office by the U.S. Senate. He also faces political pressure to resign. The president says flatly, no. In an atmosphere of rancor and partisanship, the U.S. House approved 2 of 4 impeachment counts, yes to 1 count of perjury and 1 of obstruction of justice.
And there were more calls on the House floor today for President Clinton's resignation. But does that reflect what the American public wants? According to our new poll, the answer is no. As news of this historic impeachment vote came, New Yorkers in Times Square were disgusted and polarized.
I would really like him to resign. That would be the honorable and the intelligent thing to do.
No, I don't think he should resign. I think if history looked back and saw what this president resigned for, they'd kind of laugh at this point in history.
That view is echoed in the latest CBS News, New York Times poll, conducted in the hours after the historic vote. Most Americans, 66%, believe President Clinton should not resign, and today's events changed few minds. Even with the Senate trial looming, 68% of Americans believe Mr. Clinton can still be an effective leader.
This is the best president that we've had.
At the Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta today, thoughts turn to the legacy that this American leader will leave.
It's a shame that he has gone this far and to be put in the history books for this impeachment. I think it's a disgrace.
In the Republican stronghold of Newport Beach, California, there was support for the House leadership, but concern about the fallout from the Republican actions.
I think it's going to hurt the Republican Party. I don't think it's helping us at all.
And I've known Bill since he was this high. And that may not be an excuse, but I just believe he is a good president.
And in the president's hometown today, we found support for the president and anger at those who would like him removed.
My grandchildren will look back and say, Granddad, why in the world what were people thinking?
Those grandchildren's questions seem to reflect what our poll also found today. 63% of the Americans we talked to said they disapprove of the House impeaching President Clinton. That is little change from what we found last week, Dan.
Thanks, Paula. Still to come on tonight's edition of the CBS Evening News, today's other big story, the 4th day of the air war pounding of Iraq. Also, House Republicans in disarray after Speaker-elect Livingston bows away. And looking for answers on a day of uncertainty in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Man, that chili was hot.
You got heartburn too?
Yeah. Want to try these new Pepsi AC chewables?
It says you gotta take it with water. What's the water for? Oh, it sounds you don't need water.
Just because new Pepsi is chewable doesn't mean it works like Tums. Tums calcium knocks out heartburn fast. Pepsi Chewable's famotidine has to go through your bloodstream, so it takes 40 minutes just to start controlling acid.
You want to go back for water?
Forget the water. Pass the Tums.
How are these?
Bigger. This Super Bowl Sunday, the Prize Patrol could surprise you with $31 million. Bigger. The one and only Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes. Now, bigger than ever.
New individually wrapped all-day panty liners. Tastefully toteable. New individually wrapped all-days panty liners. Remarkably mobile.
Announce
announcing an amazing discovery. One-A-Day has combined the power of herbs with vitamins to help you during the cold season, support your mood, even memory. New from One-A-Day. Just what you need to feel your best.
Come fly with the whooping crane, soar with the young condors, and visit some ocean creatures as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Endangered Species Act this Sunday morning.
The Chiefs collide with the Giant Killers in New York. Oh, the pressure's on. The Oilers and the Packers both battle for playoff spots. The NFL on CBS.
President Clinton addressed the nation tonight to say it's over. He and British Prime Minister Blair are halting U.S. and British air attacks against Iraq. Let's go right to CBS News national security correspondent David Martin. David?
Dan, after 4 nights of bombing, Operation Desert Fox is over. President Clinton has ordered a halt to airstrikes against Iraq.
I'm confident we have achieved our mission. We have inflicted significant damage on Saddam's weapons of mass destruction programs.
In all, nearly 100 targets have been hit, some by the B-1 bomber, which can unload more than 40,000 pounds of bombs. Admiral Tom Wilson showed what a Republican Guard barracks looked like after being hit by a B-1.
This pilot walked a stick of bombs across this barracks facility.
But what counts is not the damage done to buildings, but the damage done to Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. Defense Secretary Cohen made clear Saddam has been set back, but by no means put out of business.
We estimate that Saddam's missile program has been set back by at least a year.
The U.S. did not even try to hit the chemical and biological agents that would go into those weapons of mass destruction.
It's very difficult to try to target biological facilities, manufacturing facilities, since it could take place in a room the size of this one right here under the roof of any building.
Modest goals for an operation costing hundreds of millions of dollars and sparking anti-American demonstrations. This may be the last night of bombing, but it is just another chapter in the long and frustrating struggle to contain Saddam. Dan?
David Martin at the Pentagon. CBS's Mark Phillips can breathe a little easier after covering those attacks for 4 dangerous nights in a row from a Baghdad rooftop. Mark, give us the latest.
Dan, it is quiet here, and it seems like now it'll finally stay that way for a while. But a bombing campaign that began with such fury went out with a whimper. Night 4 of the Baghdad bombardment. And once again, Iraqi anti-aircraft fire was the first indication that the planners of this attack thought they still had work to do here. The target this time appeared to be the Iraqi Ministry of Labor, but this was one strike that didn't strike home, the missile falling about 100 yards short. The resulting collateral damage, say the Iraqis, injured 3 people. We'll likely never know the real death toll here. The Iraqis are now putting it at about 68. And staged a public media event funeral for what they said were some of the victims. Funerals and the aftermath of errant missiles are the only images the Iraqis are allowing out of here. But they wanted to send one other message today as well. The UN's unscum inspectors, they say, the ones who were pulled out before these attacks, will now not be allowed back.
Anything that has to do with inspection and monitoring of weapons mass destruction is past history.
History is always written a little differently here than it is everywhere else, and already it's being constructed. Once again, it's said here, Iraq has stood up to the might of the strongest power on earth and survived. Dan?
The steady Mark Phillips in Baghdad. As you heard from David Martin just a few seconds ago, anti-U.S. feelings over the Iraq attacks boiled over today in the Arab world. Some seemed orchestrated in Damascus, Syria. Thousands of demonstrators rallied outside the U.S. embassy, some scaling the wall and tearing down the stars and stripes. Protesters also trashed the U.S. ambassador's residence and a cultural center in Syria. No Americans apparently were hurt. When the CBS News comes back to you, the story behind the dramatic resignation of Speaker-elect Bob Livingston.
For an enjoyable weekend, avoid things like alarm clocks. Instead, grab a big grand cinnamon roll.
What better way to unwind than by enjoying